Testing. 1, 2. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I have pictures of that too when we were in Dallas. Both of us receiving our fashion awards.
Receiving our fashion awards. And you reciting Shakespeare's sonnets absolutely floored me because I could never remember them and love them.
Oh, well, I don't remember.
I don't know whether you had a book of it or I did, but one of us had. You probably did.
In Texas, was
yeah,
it? Well, I know.
A little book of sonnets.
I do have. I have one sometimes in my handbag, because I love having little books to travel with.
I think you did.
Of course, my handbag is my survival kit. I've got a little bit of everything in that.
You had your makeup kit then, and you have it now. I remember.
The same one.
Same
I do.
one,
Absolutely.
I know, which I love. That's one of the things that also, once we're talking about clothes, and you said, "Oh, I still have a Zuckerman suit," and I said, "Oh, that's marvelous. That's just the way I feel about clothes. You know that you should keep them if you."
When they're old friends, you hate to depart with them. Well, with Carolyn, the other, when was it, last year, she showed me something in a magazine. She said, "Mommy, now look at this. This is exactly the suit that I want this year. Now this is what I'm trying to find." And I said, "Hold on." And I went into the depths
Archives.
of my closet and came up with the identical suit that I had made in London years ago when I was making Mogambo. And I brought in, it was one of these beautiful tweeds that, of course, will never wear out. And Carolyn put it on, and it looked as though it had been made on her. And she wore it, and I said, "I am lending it to you, not giving
Did you tell me once that some woman wrote you and you felt sorry for asking, you had so many clothes, and wouldn't you please send her something? And you sent her a suit.
Oh, that's a terrible. That was a terrible
it?
story. No, it was a woman out in the country, and asked if I had thought she was just my size, and if I had any old clothes to send her, that she would be happy to have them, and so I sent her what I thought would be suitable for someone living in the country, and I gave up one of my lovely old tweed suits that I really cherished.
That's hard for you to do too. I know that.
And I think she was expecting rather glamorous Hollywood clothes and was very disappointed with what I sent her, and she sent it back. And I took out my green tweed suit, put it back in my closet, and wore it for a few more years.
I know, I remember that. She probably had ideas of one of those things you wore in high society.
I suppose.
Yeah. Which were beautiful.
Sorry to disappoint her.
Watching the children grow up, and I don't know, an awful lot of my memories go back to Switzerland somehow.
Oh, well, we had some lovely times in Switzerland. And, of course, when the children were younger, we could stay there longer and weren't confined to school holidays. It was fun. And... But
Renier seemed to have much more fun with the children somehow up in the country,
And of course, they were all starting to, I was teaching them to ski, and of course now they have to wait. They have to wait for me. I mean,
There's Fanny.
Ah, dear Fanny.
The one dog I had once didn't last long. This one, I think, was one of the Valentine. We were there February 14th, and we all were making Valentines.
That's when we had. When we had our George Washington.
Oh, George Washington.
Party.
That's right. Yeah. That was such fun.
Lovely. That's a cute one.
Here we are, the Roger, and talk about coats. Having coats a long while. I still have that.
You
coat.
still have that one.
Pink Harris tweed.
That's a lovely shade.
Had them do Harris. They never did Harris tweed in pinks or blues. They always did the men's. And this was old then.
But you still go up to those factories and to those. Of course, those were probably done.
Well, they're not.
I'm going back
again. Tweeds are coming back, as everything does. I was disappointed that for 5 or 6 years I had collections of tweeds. Nobody used them.
No.
I had tweeds on my shelf, and now everything is that ultra suede.
Well, is that well, I was going to ask, is that because ultra suede has taken over from...
Well, for me, unfortunately, I think several other designers have been able to do things with tweeds, but they're coming back now and asking me for tweeds and gray flannels, which I love. I mean,
Well,
all
you
the old
always
fabrics.
have done those things so
This
beautifully.
fall, I'm doing a line-to-line copy of my own clothes from 1935,
No.
40. I thought it'd be amusing to take the old ones out, because when I show the old ones, everybody says, "Oh, I wish I could have that." And I said, "Well, I
Well, the
can't
show
sell
that we
it."
had for the Lindbergh evening, that was
Yeah, well,
such a
those,
success.
yeah,
That
those
was such
are
fun
a lot
to
of
see.
those first ones.
They
are
were
things
lovely.
everybody wants to buy. There's a long camel's hair coat and a black watch dress that
And what
everybody
was
wants.
and what was fun that the men were so interested that evening, and they loved seeing the old clothes and how contemporary they still were.
yeah.
They were really interested in it, I thought.
Well, and I think I always am amused when I don't go out very often now, but when I used to go out and men would come in and shop with their wives, they're always, you know, insisting on their wives buying my clothes, which I thought was rather nice. They said, "Well, it looks as if it's going to wear a long while." You know? And I love men's commentary on clothes. Once I had a young man review my spring collection a long while ago, and it was one of my favorite. I'll send you a copy
Really?
sometime. A young man in Arizona, and he apologized for having to cover. He said, well, he was an art critic and a literary critic, and he was sorry he didn't know much about fashion.
I think they should do that more often. I think it would be fun for the
I
critics
think they
too.
should, yeah.
That every once in a while a film critic should come and do
Clothes.
and
a
a music critic should review an art show or
Yeah,
something.
I think
it would be stimulating for them as well, and it would be fun for the public. I think it would be a lovely idea.
I'll send you this because I think he had a much more interesting comment on the clothes than anything I've ever had written about me in these quick press things.
Because the people who do this over and over and over again, they see so much more than the ordinary public does, so that their viewpoint has to be different, and they do become jaded in their outlook a little bit. And
yes, and they see the same thing too
and
much.
they're looking,
they're looking
for fashion news, whereas the average person is looking for something that is useful, that fits into her lifestyle, that is going to hold up a few seasons, and not, I mean, for practical reasons. The average person just can't change complete wardrobes every 6 months or every year. It's just not possible, and everything is so accelerated that the fashion news has become so accelerated that every 6 months they're looking for dramatic fashion. And I think that's why your clothes have been so successful, and that it's, you know, they've been, they're just classic, and one is always comfortable, one is always, your fabrics are always so elegant. I've always adored the raw silks and that you used to use so much of, and they're still so good looking.
Now they get unpopular again. It's very strange, but I still have them. I've used them for 35 years now.
Yes.
And this year they're a little more popular. I have a couple of high colors in it. But that is what I call a thermostatic fabric. I've had pants of that, and I've been warm in them when I want to be warm, and they're cool when you want to be cool. Now, I don't know what it is about that particular fabric that does that. You know, you can wear a cashmere sweater under a coat of that, and I'm sure you'll be just as warm as not a very heavy wool overcoat.
Well, I had one of your raw silk coats that I wore all fall over trousers, and because
and if you have a little warm sweater on underneath it, should be really warm.
It was fantastic.
But I think that the hectic changes, especially in the 60s, was absolutely disastrous for women. I mean, for the way they look. You look on the streets today, and even in its lowest common denominator, what we saw the other night was horrifying.
Well, I think the 60s, it was a moment where it was, the attitude was, I don't care what I look like. You know, it was this expression of freedom, and I don't care what I look like. And when kids would say that to me, I don't care what I look like, and I said, well, you don't care, you don't have to look at yourself all day. I have to look at you.
That's a marvelous comment.
You know, dressing is a question of consideration for others who have to look at you all day long.
And also, as manners have lost their significance. And manners aren't something that are artificial. They have to be natural, and they are a cushion in life, good manners.
Well, of course.
But even today, the uncombed hair look, they're always afraid of being a little, you don't have to be too polished, or you can be relaxed and comfortable in your clothes.
Well, I think the important thing is to dress for the occasion. And when one feels comfortable in clothes for an occasion, this is what makes all the difference.
Oh, it does. But there's where you're marvelous with your clothes. The first time I noticed that, I remember up at Rockersville once, you had a charming cotton dress on, and I looked down at your shoes, and you had the oldest pair of, but beautiful, because they were leather sandals. And you said, oh, I wore those in Mogombo, and that was about 10 years before, I guess, and you've had them ever since. But you looked so right, because they were comfortable, and they went with the cotton dress, and you had the look of being relaxed in your clothes. And I don't know whether you remember the time in London when I think you were probably pregnant with Albie, and you had a big raincoat on, and you had a scarf on your head, and very comfortable shoes, and you walked out, and they took a picture of you, and some absolutely asinine woman wrote you up and said, look how unchic she is. And I wrote back to her and got a letter I think I sent to you, and I said, there's a woman that knows knows how to dress. I said, if she goes to a coronation of, say, the Shah, I mean, she's dressed absolutely impeccably. But she's going out shopping on a rainy London street. You wear a raincoat, and they weren't long at that time, if you remember.
That's right. It was when the short skirts were first coming in, and my raincoat, I was criticized for having a raincoat a few inches too long.
You know, it was so stupid, and they did retract it. You know, she did.
It's funny.
Yeah.
But now, that's what's nice a little bit about the freedom of styles today, that people aren't measuring hemlines. You can wear more or less what suits you and what you feel like. I mean, the length of dresses doesn't matter so much. But I remember years ago when the Dior New Look came in, and the dresses were 11.5 inches from the ground, and they were measured. And even, I suppose, up until about 5 years ago, it was the inch, the hemline to the nth of an inch was measured and important.
Their Chanel was so wonderful. Of course, I'm a great exponent of Chanel. She said, always keep your skirts about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below your knee, and leave them there, and you won't have
and
to
she
worry.
held out through all the ups and downs.
All the ups and downs.
The battle of the
cardigan
hemline, she never
jackets
changed.
are still good today, if you wear a straight skirt and cardigan jacket. But the great big bulky look, and the strange part of it is, they're selling size 2, and most of the young designers today don't make anything larger than a 12. Now they go from 2 to 12.
But I can't. When I go into stores now and they say what size, I have no idea. I can only go by measurements and pull out a tape measure and start measuring things, because the sizes are so crazy, and each manufacturer has a different
and a different look in a way, because the bulky look, of course, has been in for so long. That I hope it's going out soon.
Yeah, well, I think so. It seems to me I see waistlines appearing, and I think young girls go to so much effort today to keep trim and to keep thin that why cover it all up in a bulky
with a great
look?
big bulky look. But there are two types of figures in women. There are so many, but there are two distinct types, and that is a feminine figure with a small waist and fairly rounded hips, and some bust, of course, and preferably large shoulders, fairly broad shoulders. You can dress that woman with a belt, and she looks marvelous. Then you have the boyish figure, which has slim hips, a larger waist, and not much bust. And they fall, into all variations of the same thing. Some of them are pear-shaped, large up here and small on top, and they're difficult to dress. But I like to make clothes that fit both of these women. I can't wear a belt at all. And even when I was a model, I never liked a belt particularly. I liked this sort of a loose jacket. and straight skirts. But I love to do the peasant look with a full
Mhm,
skirt and
mhm.
a little waistline. And actually, it's a prettier look and more feminine, especially in the evening.
That was fantastic. That was
Good. Good.
really wonderful.
Rachel, would you like some coffee now?
Is that the phone right here?
Yes, it is.
Can Fanny pick up that phone, do you think?
I'll get it. She should get it.
I don't know whether that's yours or mine or what.
Princess Grace, you have been a friend of Miss Maxwell for close to 25 years, I guess.
Yes, it's been a long while.
And obviously, as a friend, you've looked at her both as a friend and as a great designer. What have been your impressions of her design through the years? I mean, when you've thought of her as a designer, as a person that made clothes that you've been comfortably wearing, what have your reactions
Well,
been?
I think what I like about Vera's clothes, first of all, is that they're classic. And I think she designs for the woman who has a busy life, who wants to be elegant, but wants her clothes to be rather classic and rather, how can I say? It's hard to find just the right words. But, and of course, every woman wants to feel well dressed, whatever the occasion. And one's whole, if one isn't dressed properly for an occasion, a woman's unhappy and feels self-conscious, and dress is so important. And I think Vera understands the psychology of a woman in the different aspects of life and activities, and designs accordingly. And as she has explained herself, she understands the problems of certain types of figures and silhouettes, and takes this into consideration. And I think, I've always been very comfortable in all of the clothes that I've had of Vera's. I'm a great fan. I have been with her often when she has been shopping for materials or for accessories or certain colors, and she is very inventive. Although her things are very classic, her imagination is wonderful as far as buttons or trimming or the types of tweeds, the types of materials, the colors. And she's done so much with the new ultra suede, and her speed suit is really quite a novel idea, and I think very practical and wonderful for today's style of living. And she has had, to continue for so many years, been true to herself, to her own ideas of fashion, and also kept with the time, shows that what a really classic designer she is.
What do you think, as a consumer, what do you think of the trends that women have been forced through the years? You certainly have had to be subject to it as a person in the public eye.
Yes, of course, my life dictates a certain type of wardrobe. But there's certain styles that I've liked more than others. I've tried to, first of all, I tried to dress to put my good points to advantage and hide the bad ones, and still try to stay with, up to date. There's some of the trends in the 60s that I didn't find suited me particularly, and kept on with my own kind of classic wardrobe that I felt was right for me.
You also have 3 very lively children, one of whom has just been married, and you've had to deal with them as consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an image of the fashion industry as it relates to a mother and children?
Well, I've always been interested in fashion, and my daughter Caroline certainly is too. She has her own sense of style, and I've had fun buying clothes for her, and but she has her own. I think I understand her sense of style, and also with my younger daughter, who has her own very definite ideas, but each one shows her personality in the way she dresses, and I think that's what's important and good.
Mhm.
Instead of following the fashion absolutely to the T to be up to date, I think one has to develop one's own personal fashion sense.
Through the many movies that you've given to the world as a great actress, were you directly involved in the selection of your clothes, or what was the role of
Well,
the
I
designer
was
at that
very
time?
much so. I worked with the very first pictures I made, perhaps not, but afterwards, I worked very closely with Edith Head and Helen Rose, who did most of my clothes and pictures.
Mhm.
And if I did a costume picture, I had great fun researching the period and finding the kind of things that I thought I'd like to wear.
Did you find Miss Head and Miss Rose, did they work with you in essence,
Oh
as
yes,
opposed to
yes.
being?
Oh, absolutely. And both had a great, how can I say, that respect for the part, what was necessary for the character, and Edith Head and I I did 3 pictures for Alfred Hitchcock, and Edith Head was the designer for those films, and we worked together very closely and would exchange ideas, and Mr. Hitchcock would sort of leave us very much on our own and gave us his trust to come up with something that would be right.
Mhm.
And so it was great fun for me to be able to work that closely with the designer.
Didn't you do some modeling yourself as a very
I
young
did,
person
yes.
in New York?
When I was a student here at the American Academy, I worked I did photography, modeling in the afternoons. And I didn't do that much fashion. I did a little bit, but I did more of what was called illustration modeling
Mhm.
of ads for toothpaste and shampoos and refrigerators. Those kind of the healthy American look rather than
Yes.
the chic fashion beauty.
We were talking about your 3 children, and of course, and you being a very active mother, and needing to support both roles, that of mother and a figure of state. You must have you ever been asked to in essence buy a designer, to promote a designer by the selection, by selecting their clothes, or
No, I
do you really
haven't.
feel that it's been
I
independent?
I have always tried to be independent in that way, that I like to choose as I wish, and there are certain designers in Paris that I have gone to more frequently than others, of course.
Mhm.
But I get quite a few of my things from Dior, some from Saint Laurent, Givenchy, Madame Grey. Here in this country, I used to, as Vera mentioned, I used to like very much the suits of Ben Zuckerman, and many other American designers. I've worn their clothes frequently. But I've always been very faithful to Vera, first of all, because she's been a very close friend, and I've admired her work.
It's very admirable work, for sure. Just in summary, can you think back through, well, let's say the last 25 years or so, last 30 years, of the highlights of design that you felt were important rather than simply trendy, but they were really making
Well, I
a
suppose
statement?
the first big fashion news that I was aware of was the new look of Dior just after the war, and that was just at the time that I was coming to New York to study, and so it was an exciting time when I was modeling then, just at the time that his new look had swept the world and was creating all kinds of fashion excitement. And then I don't know. I suppose when I was doing
a film, working with Edith Head, the style was very much the stiff petticoats and the big bouffant skirts, and I wanted to get away from that. And so in one of the pictures we did together, we tried a whole different look, which sort of brought back some of the mousseline dresses and chiffons and soft fabrics which hadn't been used for a long time, and which was quite a departure at that time in Hollywood, which was about 1954, I suppose, 1953, 54. And then, I don't know, I didn't care very much for the sack look in that period, and I didn't like the mini skirts, but you know.
Good classic design, I think, is.
Well, I feel more comfortable in something like that, and so naturally, one sort of tends to like what suits oneself best.
Well, thank you very much, Princess, for these few
You're very
moments.
welcome.
I certainly appreciate it. That's great. It's really fun.